Hey guys, really quick before the video begins, I just wanted to let you know two things. First of all, this video is sponsored by Factor75, more on them later. The second is that I recorded this back on patch 1.04 last year. So just in case there's been any major changes since then, well, now you know why my gameplay might look a little bit different. Enjoy the video. Intelligence. In the real world, it's used to get fancy degrees that you'll never use. In media, it's given people the power to do the impossible. And in Elden Ring, it's used to trivialize the game. However, because I clearly enjoy torturing myself, I decided to try and beat Elden Ring with the lowest starting intelligence without putting a single level into it and only dealing magic damage. In technical terms, I wanted to know, can you beat Elden Ring as a Brainlet Mage? Or I guess rather could I, since others have beaten the game in much more difficult ways. But I'm not those other players. I'm an idiot. Starting off, I had to choose the stupidest class. It was a tie between the Reckless Barbarian and the Religious Man at 7 intelligence. I'm sure there's mods to completely adjust stats and reduce my int to 1, but I'm playing with what the game is giving me. I chose Prophet because, per my rules, I could still level mine, since having a large brain doesn't mean filling it with anything intellectual. Prophet starts out with a spear and the Catch Flame incantation. With no way to deal damage, my primary source of income came from grave robbing. I made my way to the only person selling spells in Limgrave. There was just, one large roadblock. Even if that bastard wasn't guarding Selin, I couldn't cast spells with my fingers anyways. And even if I could, I still wasn't smart enough to throw a measly magic pebble. Thankfully, just like wearing a suit makes me look richer than I actually am, equipping certain items can make you appear smarter than you actually are in Elden Ring. Similarly, food is used to gain incredible stat buffs to strength, energy, and happiness. And thanks to today's sponsor, Factor75, it's no longer necessary to hunt your own food in the wild since the food comes fresh to you, ready to eat. With various meal plans, rotating menus, and dietary preferences, there's options for everyone to enjoy a delicious meal or snack. I love to cook. I also love to make a mess. Thankfully, Factor eliminates the lengthy time factor with meals ready to eat in 2 minutes or less and no cleanup. Perfect for those days when I'm trapped by my dog for hours, or said, yeah, I'll start cooking once I beat this boss. If you want to get in on this life hack and get back more time while still eating good food, check out the link in my description or pinned comment, or head to go.factor75.com and use the code FACTOR33265 for 50% off your first box. Thanks again to Factor for supporting my channel. Now, no more smart decisions. This is a Brainlet run after all. Down on the Siofra River, through this teleporter and behind this boss was Marika's Scarseal, which boosted my intelligence, mind, and 2 other useless stats by 3. Unfortunately, I also took 10% more damage. I could already see how this run would be going. I now looked smart enough to cast a simple magic pebble, but I still needed a magic stick. There's actually 2 staves I was smart enough to use, but one required me to commit murder in the Weeping Peninsula, so I had to go for the Albinauric staff in the Volcano Manor. I made my way to Liurnia where I met a fellow Brainlet who just happens to sell Pebble. I actually didn't know that he did. I thought he only sold Glintstone Arc, and my first and only spell would require 13 intelligence. I guess that's just me being a Brainlet and not doing my research. My next step in appearing smarter was at the Academy. On my way, I stopped by the merchant in Liurnia to grab my uniform and made a discovery that A, I had no idea about, and B, didn't really matter because I didn't end up using it. It turns out, even if you aren't smart enough to properly use a staff, you can still cast spells with it, although the damage will just tickle your enemies. The Academy is home to several Burger King mascots whose headpieces you can acquire. These glintstone crowns boost your brain power to the detriment of another stat. Most of them require murder. However, Miyazaki understood that idiots like me wanted to do challenges like this, and placed the Olivinus crown behind an illusionary wall just after the schoolhouse classroom. I now had +6 intelligence for a total of 13. and it only cost 9% of my health and taking 10% more damage. Some builds can be categorized as glass cannons. Mine is a glass noodle. To get to the Volcano Manor, I had two options. I could get eaten by the Abductor Virgin in the Academy basement, and honestly, in hindsight, it would have made for a more adventurous option. But I went with the safer option, which was grabbing both halves of the Dectus Medallion, along the way grabbing all the Golden Seeds and Sacred Tears in Limgrave, the Weeping Peninsula, and Ohio. It didn't require me to kill anything, and just like me IRL during this run, I'd need all the potent drinks I could get. Before moving along to the Altus Plateau, I had to sort out the dispute between BFF Brogart and Best Girl Raya. It's actually a sin not to befriend these two, and Raya offers players a one-way ticket to the Volcano Manor. After some parkour, I found a frog mask and a staff. The Albinaric staff is the only staff that scales with Arcane, and was a viable option for this challenge since I could level Arcane to boost my damage. But it was merely a tool for getting what I really wanted, the Demi-Human Queen's staff. Maybe one day I'll redo this run and see if this would have worked better. This staff only needed the brain power of a toddler, yet still had good intelligence scaling. At this point, I was probably ready to finally fight the first boss, but I wasn't done Batmaning the shit out of this run yet. I started with my revenge on Pumpkinhead and asked Selen to teach me sorceries. I think she called me an idiot, but she said yes anyways.
Oh well, perhaps nurture will defy nature, with a bit of luck.
I purchased whatever spells I could, collected enough smithing stones to upgrade the staff to +5, increased my memorization skills, and upgraded my flasks. While in Liurnia, I also found some cognitive enhancers I could mix into my wondrous physic, giving me a temporary boost up to 23 intelligence. You might think that this was all a bit overkill, but just because my in-game character lacked intelligence didn't mean I needed to also be an idiot. After probably 4 to 5 hours, I was more than ready to take on Margit. This was a good chance to see what spells were worth using. He did kill me once, but I got him on my next attempt after removing Marika's Scar Seal. I hauled ass through Stormvale's front gate and got to Godrick the Grafted. Before fighting him though, I wanted to check in on Roger as he could help me get Ranni's questline started because I'm a simp. Godrick's fight was a snooze fest because he couldn't deal with my ability to simultaneously walk backwards and cast spells. Until in a real brainlet moment, I backed myself into a corner and got fried. Got him on my second try though. With one shard bearer defeated, my choices for the next were either Larva Mommy or Horse Chatty. I went for Rennala since killing the Red Wolf of Radahn meant another spell slot and access to more BK crowns. My first try didn't go so well, but on my second try It was at this point I realized I hadn't spent a single rune leveling any stats at all, and I had just watched 32,500 runes disappear. Oh my god! Okay, new plan. Since Clifford wouldn't stay still when I casted my spells, I'd return his Descender. But for another brief moment, I became my Brainlet character and was determined to beat him without leveling at all. I ran through Spiderhand Land, but before getting to Padilla, I had to go through Loretta, which was a piece of cake. On my second try. With a combination of the spells Know You, Magic Sword, and Internet Explorer, I was finally able to bring the Red Wolf of Radahn down to half health. Then just a Red Wolf. Then just Red. Then just dead. With base level 7 intelligence, only magic damage, and no levels dumped into anything, I finally killed that stupid dog after 2 hours of attempts. I grabbed the Radahn icon before playing less exciting Mirror's Edge, engaged in a crab battle, and found a double Burger King head, which doubled the intelligence I got, and doubled the detriment it caused. With the additional 6 intelligence from the Twin Sage Crown combined with the plus 10 from my physic, I was at 23 intelligence. And if I needed to, Marika's Scar Seal could bump me up to 26 int, boosting my damage and letting me cast more spells like the BFMS. Since Rennala has absolutely insane magic resistance, I turned my attention to her daughter, Ranni, and continued Roger's questline to gain an audience with the blue waifu. First thing I had to do was kill a Black Knife assassin, and the BFMS is stupid effective against them. With enough mind and stamina, you can stunlock one to death. I didn't, but could still confirm a lot of damage that way. I also learned through this fight you can parry their ranged attack with Karian Retaliation, and it actually saved my ass. While in the Black Knife Catacombs, I decided to kill the Cemetery Shade because
I like money,
and was also rewarded with the Twin Sage Sorcerer Ashes. Up until this point, I actually never even thought about using spirit summons. I never made a rule not to use them, but on principle, I guess that if I ever did, they should also only deal magic damage. However, I was determined to attempt this run without any help because, let's be honest, making it harder makes it that much more interesting. Which is ironic considering the next choice I made. After becoming an undercover spy for a dying Roger, I joined Ranni's crew and met the rest of the gang, including Professor Daterape. He wanted to turn Nefeli into a lifeless puppet that he could control. That sounded terrible, but I had to help him because he promised me a shiny new talisman. I told Albus I'd find the Chosen One and help Nefeli avenge the Albinarics. Not far from here was the Roads End Catacombs, home to the Spirit Collar Snail and the biggest slice of cheese for this run. The Watchdog staff is technically also a staff, just bigger. I could use its unique ability, which according to the description, the wiki, and eventual testing with magic boosting effects, deals magic damage. It also took somber smithing stones to upgrade, unlike my other staff, so I could easily upgrade both of them. There was just one problem. I wasn't just pathetically stupid, I was also pathetically weak. If I wanted a two-handed, I needed 23 strength, and I only had 11. Luckily, thanks to the power of items, I only needed 2 points to reach 23. Hey, Marco, isn't this kind of cheating?
Yes, but actually no.
My rule was magic damage only, not spell only, which I didn't think would be as hard because one spell in particular fucking rocks. Rock Sling is one of a few spells that deals physical damage, trivializing fights against bosses like Rennala who give up as soon as you get physical, and the immense poise damage easily posture breaks most enemies anyways. The entire run would have literally just been throwing real pebbles instead of magic ones. I know this may be a controversial choice, but spoiler alert, I was right. Don't believe me? Just wait until the end of the video. So yeah, I totally abused the staff's ability. For a much smaller FP cost when paired with this talisman from EG, I could actually deal normal amounts of damage since it scaled with the staff's level and not any of my own stats. It also proved to teach me something new. While fighting the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man, I learned that I could use Carian Retaliation to parry my own magic balls. I'd lose one of them, but gain 3 magic shards. At this point, it was time to beat Radahn and move on with the game. Previously, I actually tried fighting him at least a few dozen times, and it always ended in tragedy. I didn't use the festival summons because they didn't hit with magic, but I did almost break and use the two-faced Burger King.
You idiot!
However, these attempts were all before I got the big staff. Although I couldn't use it on horseback, it was really easy to gain distance, cast, and run away. I managed to get him down to half health and was really tempted to use gravity to finish him off because of the whole, well, just because my character is low int doesn't mean I am. But I decided, nah, my method was cheese enough and ended up beating him with this method first try at level 51. Steppot Alexander eventually helps buff your weapon skills, so after the fight, I caught up with him at the Mount Gelmir hot springs. Back at the round table hold, I got my 3rd talisman pouch, devoured Radahn's soul, gave Nefeli the bad drink, and checked in on Roger, who was now dead. I went to see if D knew anything about it, and he was dead too. Well, better make sure their armor goes to good use. I noticed Roger's armor said it boosted glintstone sorcery skills, and wondered if it worked with the Watchdog staff. It didn't. Miyazaki, please.
Oh, come on!
With a giant hole now in the ground, I could continue Ranni's questline, by which I mean I could continue Celavis's questline. He planned to betray Mama Smurf, which I agreed to help him with in exchange for a talisman that further boosted my magic damage and the amount of damage I received.
Splendid work, just marvelous.
Ha! I lied, idiot. I would never betray Ranni. She still has useful items for me. I went down into Nokron where I fought the only thing stupider than me. Because the Mimic tier knew all the spells I did but was too stupid to use most of them without drinking the physic, it spent most of the fight scratching its head in confusion while I threw magic at it. At this point though, I was tired of taking all the extra damage and sought a way to get rid of Radagon's Soreseal, so I grabbed this guy's crown which buffed my int and strength. I found Ranni's thingamabob and she gave me an hourglass. I Fresh Prince of Bel-Air the Carian Study Hall, which led me to the Stargazer's Heirloom for +5 intelligence. I made a detour for Terra Magica and both Haima spells, got through the capital quickly, and made my way to Golden Godfrey. Even with my silly build, this fight was easy. Making use of Great Blade Phalanx, Great Glintstone Shard, and the Cannon, I got him on my first try at level 70.
Is this a joke?
Next up was Morgott. I walked across the capital to his boss room and... Oh wait, that's the elevator that takes you to the next area. I swear to you, this isn't scripted or a bit. I walked my ass across the capital, died a couple times because I legitimately thought that's where the boss room was. I think my character may be rubbing off on me. Going back and finding the real spot where I faced the last of all kings, I tried making use of Terra Magica.
Hello?
Truly another in-character decision, as I was easily forced out of the circle. Thankfully, he was just as much of a glass build as I was. He got me twice in his second phase, but third time's the charm. At level 73 without a single point put into intelligence and only magic damage, I was ready to go to the land of the giants, but actually wanted to visit the consecrated snowfields. I made good on my promise to Albus and found the chosen one, beat the Fell Twins, and restored Morgott's Great Rune. That's when I realized for most of this run I had been giving up an additional 5 points in intelligence, as well as for every other skill. While Morgott's Great Rune vastly raises HP, Godrick's raises every skill level by 5 points. So I went back and took care of that. Up in more hostile Canada, I felt the difficulty spike immediately as I encountered the Blackblade Kindred, who knocked me on my ass twice before I managed to kill him. As I wanted to bring Latenna back to the Promised Land, I needed to head to Castle Sol and face Commander Nile. I absolutely hate this boss fight. I don't know if it's the cramped arena or the annoying knights he summons, but this is not a fun fight in my opinion. Luckily, Miyazaki threw me a bone and broke Commander Dipshit, making him do the exact same combo over and over. Or maybe that's just how he fights and I never noticed. I don't know, but either way, this quickly became a rhythm game, and while I did drop the beat a few times, I ended up killing him first try. With my third coin in the collection completed, I got to Snoop Dogg's Arctic Adventure. On my way to finally finishing this fetch quest, I put down Anastasia for a sad smithing stone, then fulfilled my duty and brought Latenna back to the big lady where she gave me another sad smithing stone. Really only needed one, but hey, I'll never say no to free money. I needed my weapons to be as strong as possible because this was the beginning of the end. After the next big obstacle, the game would quickly become a sprint to the finish, so I gathered all the smithing stones I need to fully upgrade my staves to +10 and +25. Even then, I was worried, is this enough to kill the big red damage sponge? The fire giant completely threw me for a loop. Not only did this enormous dude's even more enormous health pool mean our fights lasted over 10 minutes and quickly filled my hard drive, but it also ensured I had to wait until phase 2 to chug my brain juice for when I'd really want the extra damage and intelligence. This face-chested behemoth could easily wipe out over half my health bar with a single hit. I guess the voiceover is on pause because Riley. And when using the Watchdog staff, the skill would only target his chest, meaning I'd have to stay uncomfortably close since the projectiles had to travel upwards. After a few attempts with it, I abandoned the big staff for a third head and hired defense so I could focus on breaking his ankle. I wasn't anticipating having to fight this in melee, but it worked super well. Phase 2 was tricky because he kept making the earth around him vomit lava while tossing suns and mini nukes at me. Every second of the fight felt do or die, and despite the pain and torment he caused me over my 4 hours of attempts spread across several days, I actually managed to do it.
Oh no!
At level 90 with only 7 points of intelligence and only using magic damage, the fire giant was dead and the end of the game was in sight. Farum Azula was hardly a challenge. Before fighting Maliketh, there was one obstacle I had to overcome. Alexander the Great. What, you thought I'd say the foreskin duo? Please. Clearly my brainletness was contagious as the two of them decided not to double team me, and I actually killed them both at the same time, beating them in under 2 minutes on my first try. No, the real obstacle was my friend, the large warrior pot, Alexander, who was simply on a quest to defeat the toughest warriors the world had ever seen. I'm really not sure how he made it this far though, because he crumbled almost immediately upon challenging me. But at least I got his insides. Maliketh was next. Thankfully, another glass boss that would go down fairly quickly. Fun fact for this boss fight, you can use Carian Retaliation to parry his ranged attacks. Although I don't recommend it, as your max health will still drop. Second try at level 100 and he was dead. So, this is embarrassing. The full of himself monologuing little shit also took me 2 tries. But nevertheless, I was ready for the
first Elden Lord.
Combining various spells and throwing in Sorcery of the Crozier proved to be stupid effective, and I almost killed him on my second try. However, there was something unrewarding about using the Watchdog staff. It didn't feel like I earned that almost win against him. So, just as Godfrey would shed his skin and once again become Hoarah Loux,
Warrior!
I too would relinquish the big staff and become Brainlet with a small stick. Obviously, this proved to be more of a challenge.
Yikes.
I also ran out of rune arcs, just to make this a bit more challenging, I guess. It took a few hours and God knows how many attempts, but I finally got a handle on Godfrey. Now I just needed to learn his phase 2.
No, wait!
Where Godfrey felt like every move was telegraphed and deliberate, Hoarah Loux felt wild, aggressive, and made me panic roll harder than I ever have. After many more attempts than I'd like to admit, mainly because I lost count, I got his HP lower than I ever had, and then everything I learned about him vanished from my brain. For a brief moment, I once again became my character, and quickly went from 5 flasks to none. But after wrestling control back from the Brainlet, there would be no heartbreak, no rematch. Despite almost completely fumbling it, he admitted with his dying breath that it was a GG, even though the score was clearly in his favor. Now, nothing stood between me and the game's final bosses. Except me. So now's probably a good time to mention, I have never beaten the game before this. I've gotten up to exactly this point and then just never attempted fighting Radahn because I played the game mainly in co-op with Flukerson and we wanted to beat the game together, and we never did. We just never played the game again. I knew that I would have to beat Radahn and then Elden Worm. But other than that, I knew absolutely nothing about the fights and was essentially walking in blind. So there's one last Brainlet decision for this run. I quickly learned that while I could parry his ranged attacks, he could just block all of mine. And if his arm was up to block my magic, it would even block Carian Slicer. This basically meant I had to fight him as a weak-ass melee build. After getting beat up on for so long and getting nowhere, I took a break from fighting Radahn so I could go beat up his ex-wife. I wanted to respec the few points I dumped in strength into dexterity to get a slightly faster casting speed. I also decided to finish Sorceress Sellen's questline because then she would teach me Shard Spiral.
But with permanent brain damage, an unfortunate side effect.
Shard Spiral may not look very threatening at first glance, but the attack goes through enemies rather than exploding on contact, making it a game changer against bigger targets. This was my Hail Mary against Elden Beast, because what little I did know about it was that it had pretty decent magic resistance, so anything that could hit it multiple times sounded great. Of course, there's a catch. I needed 27 intelligence to use it, and the only way I could get there was with my wondrous physic, so I couldn't use the drink at all during the Radahn fight. The funny thing is, I still hadn't even beat Radahn once yet. Because he would just slap my magic away, I had to fight Radahn with Carian Slicer. This actually kind of worked to my benefit, as Radahn would use his ranged attacks less often, and it was easier to figure out his attack patterns. After like attempt 50 or something, I beat him, and for the first time faced the Elden Beast. Luckily, all that time fighting Radahn meant getting good at his fight, so I could often begin the Elden Beast fight with the majority of my flasks. Unfortunately, most of the time when I drink my physic, the beast would sense this and run away. I'd spend most of the 3 minutes chasing the fucker across the arena instead of actually dealing any damage. I even discovered the arena has borders and isn't infinite. This abomination of a boss fight doesn't even let you use your horse, and is more of a test of patience and cardio than anything else. I attempted it at least 20 times before penetrating the bastard so hard that it stunned him. At level 110, base level 7 intelligence, and only dealing magic damage, I had done what I thought I could not do, and become Elden Lord with a literally incredibly unintelligent build. I think my only regrets in this run are not finishing Ranni's questline. After all the work I did for her, it would have made for a more fitting end. If I could go back and do it again, I also wouldn't rely on the Watchdog staff, seeing as I beat the final 3 bosses without using it. So I did. While editing this, I decided to start a new run, at the time on patch 1.08.1 with the goal of beating all the bosses I cheesed without the cheese, and decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and see if, like I thought, sorcery only was really easier than magic damage only. It was. My god, it was. Rock Sling allowed me to crush Rennala right out the gate, and stunned everything, including Radahn. I did try using the Carian Retaliation spell for a bit, but it sucks in comparison to the Ash of War, so I gave up on it immediately. Ice Rag gave me a way to deal magic bleed damage, which was really helpful against most bosses, and Rolling Magma let me set traps to easily deal with input reading enemies. Really though, Rock Sling was the real star of the show. I already beat Godfrey, Hoarah, Loux, Radahn, and Elden Beast with magic damage and sorceries only, and I didn't do it with the cheese, so I didn't bother wasting hours trying that again. This video is almost already a year late, I'm not delaying it anymore. But what really upsets me the most is that I put stats over fashion, and didn't finish the game with my 3-headed outfit because clearly 3 heads are smarter than 1. Yeah, that was a good enough reason to rebeat those last bosses. Unfortunately, Rock Sling was really slow and not super useful against the final bosses, but Ice Rag gave me good damage against Godfrey, Hoarah, Loux, and Radahn, while Shard Spiral once again came in clutch against the Space Worm. I maintained a max level of 110 like my initial run, but opted to use the Prince of Death staff and buff my faith to increase my damage output. Otherwise, the run was practically the same. And since I came all this way and rectified 2 out of 3 woulda, shoulda, couldas, I decided might as well go 3 for 3 and finish the game with Ranni's ending. So there you go, both ways of interpreting a Brainlet only run, and it only cost me like 40 plus hours of gameplay and God knows how many hours editing and writing this all out and reading it all out. Now it's time for me to become Elden Lord with the lowest starting faith and only using incantations.
Have some goddamn faith!
Thank you guys so much for watching. This run was a ton of fun and probably one of the highlights of my time with Elden Ring. If you got any other challenge runs you want to see me do, let me know down below. Because of this, I'm also going to finally be continuing and making a sequel to my Elden Ring For Honor build, so definitely stay tuned for those as well. A huge thank you to my supporters on Patreon, especially Shadow, Josh, and TheRookieVA. Have a good one, and I'll see you on the next video.